How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? I'm VenomousStare, back with more StarCraft 2, and we have an excellent Zerg player who is up in a rough position. His back is against the wall, and he is going to have to do everything he can to come back, because he is against a monster, Dark, the Korean legend, a guy who has made it very far in the GSL, and someone who is known as a straight-up macro player, and a guy who is really one of the best scouters in StarCraft 2. I know that sounds like a weird title and really not one that you would think of. Usually you think like, oh, people who are really good at microing or really good at macroing, but one part of Dark's game that's really strong, specifically versus Protoss, is his consistent ability to scout. In this series, I think one of the things that he's displayed really well is his ability to pick build orders. And that is really an important characteristic to have as a StarCraft player, particularly in best of 3s and best of 5s. Like, yeah, especially if you play Protoss, like, oh yeah, you can pick some cutesy build orders in best of 1s to win some games, but what I really mean is, this series, Dark has carefully picked his opening strategies, and so far he's 2 for 2 in getting the early game advantage against Serral. And this game is a wash, as both players have gone for hatchery first. Now, Proxima Station is the map, and this map basically begs for hatchery first. It's pretty shitty for cheese, because of this ramp can be blocked by 2 queens. And with a pocket base, it just begs for expansion. So both players are pretty much doing the same thing so far. The Korean Zerg, Dark, in the bottom left is up 2-0 right now in this best of 5. Game 1, if you didn't watch it, you have to go watch it, because there were quick games, games 1 and 2. Very good games though, exciting, action-packed, micro-based ZvZs. I'm sure if you're watching this ZvZ, that probably appeals to you in some way. Serral's going for a bane nest here. A lot of players like to go roach on this map because you can easily hold the top of the ramp with some roaches. But then again, whenever you go roaches, you also have to consider, like, if the rush distance is really long, then lings are pretty damn good, like in the early mid-game and early game, because you have to tech all the way up to layer to get roach speed, and slow roaches are pretty shitty, especially if you don't have a lot of them. Because if you try to run like 5 slow roaches across the map and you get surrounded by lings, you just lost a ton of gas for no reason. Most Zerg players know that, but I like to sprinkle some newbie tips in. Notice Dark is scouting around his base. He's Shift A move commands. So basically what he's done is he's held down Shift and just clicked his lings around to do a bunch of A moves to ensure that Serral's not doing anything cutesy and like hiding three banelings over here and then like running them into the mineral line or something. Serral is trying to defend being scouted, but let's be honest, a ling getting in is almost impossible to stop. Both players have quite a few lings, both players have some banes, and the blue player, Dark, is aggressing out here to try to defend his base, but Serral is putting on the pressure, morphing those 2 banes. Now you always have to be careful, because right there they finish and Dark has to run away. And Serral is continuing to move up, but Dark has more banes. Dark's macro is exceptional. During these ling bane engagements, he always seems to be making more banes. And Dark has his last bane go off, and Serral has the cocoon cancelled away, and one of his banes is the only thing left, but more lings are on the way here for Serral. If we look at the production tab, Dark is trying to tech into roach, but that roach horn is a long way away, guys. Serral has a slight drone advantage, and I mean slight. Dark is also trying to get an Evo chamber, and Serral is continuing to put the aggression on, but notice he's going into roach in layer 2. And both players are trading lings and banes here, but it's pretty inconsequential. Both of them are very good, like they're not going to take substantially bad shots. So I want to talk about the roach disparity here. and the disparity in builds. So Dark has gone for Evo Chamber, and I really like this build because what Dark is going to do is get +1, which +1 roaches shit on lings because they two-shot them, and then he will also be getting roach speed, and he will be trying to survive the ling aggression by just having a handful of banes. And essentially what he will be doing is, after the layer finishes, he'll get roach speed and +1 and have a ton of roaches. And it looks as though Serral is doing the same thing. This is like a really common thing to do in ZvZ because the +1 roaches are good against lings. So if you have an opponent that sticks on ling aggression too long, unless they do that weird style where they get 1-1 and just tech into Infestor, which I think that style is pretty outdated, this is pretty damn good. And this is also a style that transitions well out of ling bane. So it's nice to see that both of these guys are going toe-to-toe with the same strats. It is a mirror matchup after all. Production tabs extraordinarily similar here, of course, both of them getting +1 and roach speed. Interesting deviation here is Serral is getting an infestation pit. Now, if I were to guess, I would say that he might want to try to tech into Quick Hive for ultras maybe. He could want to actually get infestors, and of course Burrow is very good. A lot of people often get Burrow on the roaches and do the tunneling claws to harass, but that's more of a Korean Zerg thing, and we would have already seen the tunneling claws. So this is going to be interesting to see what he does. Now, the way that infestation pit play works almost across the board in ZvZ is if you do get the infestation pit, if you try to tech to something, a lot of times you can get caught with your pants down if the other guy is just going for pure balls out units. So let's look at upgrades here. What is Serral doing? He doesn't have Burrow, he doesn't have pathogen glands. Now notice Dark is getting Burrow, which is peculiar. But good, I like Burrow, it's an extraordinarily useful upgrade. And both players are scouting a bit here, but there's not a lot to see. Does Dark see the infestation pit? He does. So what I'm talking about is Serral is investing a lot of gas into infestors. Well, they're going to come out with the pathetic 25 energy, and that's 300 gas because they're 150 each. Think about how many roaches that is. Roaches are 25 gas each. It's like a dozen roaches if you just look at gas. So Dark, who, if we look at his unit, or his structures tab, excuse me, he's not trying to tech into Infestor, and it looks as though he's going for that more Korean style. Of course, he is Korean, as I mentioned earlier, and the reason the Korean Zergs like this style is their multitask is so excellent. They'll just split off burrowed roaches and do 4 little groups, and then have like 4 burrowed roaches pop up at your main and natural while they pressure your 4th or 3rd. And it is extraordinarily hard to deal with. I mean, even the highest level macro players really have trouble dealing with that, because in StarCraft one of the most difficult things is reacting to multi-prong harass and then dealing with a huge army push as well, because you have to, in that very moment, figure out how many units you have to allocate to where. And here we go, aggression down onto the base of Serral. Now Serral at this point has fungal, which is absolutely huge, because even if Dark does some QTQ burrow play, he can get stopped in his tracks. But here we go, as Serral does want to try to, oh, he gets an infestor sniped, and he gets the other one sniped. That's so bad. He's so screwed, guys. That was everything. Those 2 infestors were absolutely everything. And that's why if you're going to go infestor, I think that you have to get burrow now, because infestors can cast ability while burrowed. And look at this, the Korean Zerg thing, he has burrowed roaches, and they're causing mayhem. And this is the crux of the issue, is the Korean Zerg player Dark can do this burrowed roach shenanigans, and then anytime Serral backs off to deal with it, he says, okay, now I'll push your 4th. But he's never really committed. See this? See, anytime Serral wants to fight him, he just backs off. He says, okay, lol, whatever. The real damage is being done in the main. Drones are being decimated. Notice that he's running away. He's hidden these roaches. 20 workers have been killed. These are still being slaughtered. And then this base dies. And it looks as though Serral does have a unit advantage. Dark has to be careful. 27 workers dying, my god. And this is what I was talking about. These Korean Zergs have such good multitask where they can keep up with all of these injects. Kappa HD at home. Oh, there he goes. But he can keep up with their macro. Of course, he's been maxed for a long time. And they can continuously harass and save their units. I've noticed a lot of times when lesser Zergs try to do this burrowed roach style, yeah, they can queue up the commands to have the roaches unburrow in the base, but the Korean Zergs are specifically good at keeping the roaches alive. So Serral squeezing out those couple infestors, that was actually, it turned out to be a good idea, but the execution was so bungled that he actually managed to get them both killed before casting a single spell. And the DPS of 2 infestors would have been devastating, because he would have been able to put like 35 AoE damage on probably a dozen roaches. At least. Notice that the Korean Zerg is continuously harassing, and the foreigner, Serral, is having to keep units at home in his main. And it looks as though the Korean is going to throw down some corrosives. Notice that he does have the gold, which is superior to the normal base. And these units, of course, are threatening harassment. Look at that, Serral, the Overseer on patrol. One of the most useful parts of builds like this that Dark is doing, where you do a lot of harass, is you force people to do shit like this that they're not used to doing. How many times do you honestly think Serral has to patrol an Overseer over there when he plays EU ladder games? Players are exchanging corrosive biles. Now, Dark was appearing to get the better of that, but Serral was probably just baiting him there to get a fungal like that off. Great shot there by Serral. And the infestors are very close. And this is what I was talking about earlier when they engaged over here. Serral was really in a position to land a fungal like that, and then subsequent corrosive biles, because fungal and corrosive bile, wow, do they combo well. And the Korean Zerg, notice he shoots back up with those roaches in the production tab. Missed fungal there. Excellent macro here from Dark. Notice that even though 20 supply got bombasted by Serral with that spell combo, as you see, he's hunting down the hidden roaches and lurkers here. Oh, big fungal there, as it does land on a hefty mix of units. And this is what's so good about fungal and corrosive bile, is the corrosive bile takes a while to fall, but the fungal of course keeps the units there. But Dark is teching into lurker, hydra, roach, and of course ravagers thrown in, whereas the infestors is more of the focus for the Serral comp. Now both players are teching to hive at about the even time, which is a bit weird to me, because a big advantage of this fast infestation pit play is how quickly you can get hive, and you can beat very good players if you get quick ultralisks. So it kind of shocks me that Serral would delay his hive, but he was getting pressured so badly and lost so many drones that you can't really blame him. As we see, Dark is still ahead in workers, and that tab is all you need to see. A lesser Zerg would have been laughed out of this game 10 minutes ago. And Serral is down 0-2, but he has played pretty damn well in this game. And Serral is defending over here at the choke of his third. Now remember that Serral is forced to split a lot of his units up. He did have roaches in the main earlier. This is another benefit of doing this burrowed roach style. Lurkers are hard to engage into, so fungal corrosive bile can be useful, but the Zerg Serral does have to be worried. And here we go, beautiful as obliteration. Watch his supply jump back up, as Dark is going to choose to remax on hydras. Both players have a crap load of money because they have been maxed for a hot minute. Roaches, of course, are extraordinarily supply inefficient. And lots of burrowed roaches here for Dark might go down. Now this is fine. Notice that Dark is just Benny Hilling these around and kind of derping and checking for bases. He doesn't give a shit about these roaches. He really doesn't. Pure Hydra on the way. He has so much money. He's been bilking this gold. Notice that Hydras do more damage, 3-3 is on the way, and more importantly, Hydras can turn into lurkers. Once you have like 10 lurkers, that's just brutality versus roaches. But Serral does have a numbers advantage here with pure roach now that he killed off all of the dark roaches, and he's threatening an attack over here. But Dark has a lot of roaches defending. This is the tricky part about a high-level ZvZ. There's a lot of stuff going on as lurkers die. And Hydras are actually not that good against roaches straight up because the roaches are so tanky. But if you have a handful of roaches and the Hydras actually attack, you win this fight so hard. Now the roaches pretty much sponge all of the damage here and the Hydras rip through the roaches. And look at this huge roach counter here, and he's going to focus the Hydra Den. Great play from Dark. Phenomenal job by the Korean Zerg. And that base is still mining down there, but a lot of damage is being done in the main and natural, and wow, that is a lot of roaches from one hatchery. 26 roaches on the way, and at this point Serral, he's focusing heavily on the roach because his Hydra Den is dead. Does he still have pathogen gland? No, he does not. I dare say that going down 2-0 to one of the best players in the world maybe rattled Serral a little, because I've seen Serral play and he's way better than this. We saw him lose those couple infestors over here. He's still yet to get pathogen gland. And Hydras are going to press over here onto the 4th, and this could be it if the base dies, because the blue Zerg Dark does have a gold and a 5th. Mass drone devastation is still occurring, as we're up to 66 workers killed. That is ridiculous, and it is a wonder that Serral has lasted this long. And more roaches going in. This is the thing, once your opponent gets a really big lead in Zerg versus Zerg, and if they're really good with burrow like Dark, they can just keep picking you apart. And even if you leave some units behind, if they have, you know, +2 upgrades, they can really focus fire down a lot of workers. So it is tricky. And players like Serral who lose workers to strategies like burrowed roach, as we see more corrosive biles coming down, find themselves trying to make workers throughout the game to come back. You have to do that. Oh, beautiful move. Is it a spellcaster gets pulled and then casts a spell? Really bizarre move. That's the first time I've ever seen that. And Serral attacks and does a lot of damage there as he wins that little skirmish. But look at the production tab here and the supply, as Roach Hydra is coming for Dark, and he has a way better economy than Serral. Serral's a hell of a player, but he's been consistently harassed for like the last 10 minutes by burrowed roaches. And especially once the burrowed roaches get really good upgrades, they butcher drones. Notice that Dark has an upgrade advantage. Serral is at 150 supply. He's about 50 supply down, and he's still making infestors. And if we go to upgrades, no pathogen glands, so these infestors come out flaccid. And believe me, Serral desperately needs some ready-to-go infestors that can get the job done immediately. Because as it stands, he's on 3 bases. He's down 0-2. And double spine is out for Dark. This guy really doesn't miss anything, as he can just press forward here. Serral threw down great corrosive biles, but it doesn't really matter, as a huge, superior, upgraded Roach army is going to slam forward here onto the Finnish Zerg, and Dark 3-0 Serral. And considering what we saw from Serral on my channel previously, where he did well, this is a pretty shocking result. I mean, we knew that Dark was great, but Serral is supposedly, and I think this is true, right up there with Nerchio is what the EU Zergs have to offer, you know, the best. And I think Serral is a great player. I enjoy casting his games, but Dark really showed that he was incredible, and he got the early game build order advantage in all 3 games. So make sure you subscribe for more, guys.